Hey, welcome to another episode of the Coach's Locker podcast with Chris Fore. You're looking at episode 26. Happy New Year. Happy 2019. Really appreciate you being here. Hey, if you haven't checked out my other podcasts, episode 25, 36 interview questions to prepare for. That's been pretty popular. Good feedback there. Episode 24, 99 questions to ask before taking that next job. Episode 23, surveying your players after the season. Episode 22, 6 things an athletic director looks for on your resume. Episode 21, 5 things to send an AD and 4 resume suggestions. Episode 20, developing a coaching portfolio. So as you can see, kind of the last, 5, 6, 7 episodes here have all kind of been about that job search process, which is kind of my niche, so to speak, in this coaching world. Something I really enjoy helping coaches with. You know, there's 1,000 X and O guys out there, and they're all very good. Well, most of them are very, very good. Interestingly enough, I ran the wing T for a long time. That's about all I know. X and O wise offensively. I've always hired very good defensive guys. I know defense. I know offense. Special teams, obviously. I'm very passionate about that. But my favorite thing in this coaching world is this job search process. Nobody's doing it, and again, it's something I really like helping coaches with. It's really life changing. You know, when guys email or message and thank me because something I said, a podcast, an article, my help with their resume landed them their dream job. So that stuff really pumps me up, and so I'm happy to do it. So you can check out, if you don't know already, my podcast home, 8laces, EIGHTLACES.org/podcast, 8laces/podcast. You can find all those episodes or on the footballcoachingpodcast.com. Here on episode 26, we're going to be talking about getting fired. Joy to the world. We're going to talk about getting fired. I got a guest coming on here from Southern California. His name is John Kane. Has a tremendous, interesting, weird story about getting fired in a Sears parking lot. Very interesting, unique story there. And then the admin fires him and then says, well, who should we have next? Who should our next guy be? You probably should have thought about that before firing me, pal. That's what I would have said, but John's a good guy. He's going to share his story, pretty interesting. And then after he does that, I'm going to share my story about getting fired myself and everything great that's happened since then. If you have been fired recently, you might, take a little bit out of this podcast, hopefully be encouraged that there is light at the end of the tunnel. There is a better day ahead. I know that's very difficult to hear right now, but there really is. As you'll hear Coach Kane say, as you'll hear me say, getting fired is the best thing that ever happened to me. So I'll talk through my situation after Coach Kane. So folks, episode 26, moving on after you've been fired. You might not listen to this. You might turn it off now because you're like, I've never been fired. I'm not going to be fired. That's cool. Either turn it off or, come back to it when you are fired. Or listen through a couple coaches talking about going through that process. First up, Coach John Kane. You are listening to the Coach's Locker podcast with Chris Fore, a place for all coaches to call home. The Coach's Locker podcast is a part of the Football Coaching Podcast Network. Please visit footballcoachingpodcast.com to hear and see our entire lineup of top football coaches coming to you every single podcast with valuable information to help you and your program. The Coach's Locker podcast with Chris Fore exists to help prepare coaches to be hired for the job of their dreams and to provide coaches with dynamite resources to become even more successful in their field. You can reach me on Twitter at Coach Fore. That's at COACHFORE. And my podcast home is at 8laces.org/podcast. That's 8laces, EIGHTLACES.org/podcast. Welcome to the Coach's Locker podcast with Chris Fore. Now, let's get after it.
gas will make it last. Hands up, forget about the past, 'cause you and I's everything I ever asked for. Top down round the West Coast.
Well, good morning, Coach Kane. How you doing this morning?
Good morning, Coach. I'm doing well. Happy New Year, happy holidays, all that stuff. It's good to hear from you.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks for taking some time today to share a little bit about your journey in the coaching world. Coach, tell us a little bit about your coaching background for the listeners to hear and learn a little bit about you.
Sure. So I was one of those guys that was, when I was a little kid, I always kind of knew what I wanted to do. I actually went to college to be a PE teacher, and I always wanted to coach. My first actual, quote, coaching job was a Pop Warner coach back in New York, and just kind of went up through the ranks from there. I ended up being what they have back in New York. They have modified football, which is 7th and 8th grade. I did that for a couple of years, actual tackle football, and then moved up to a JV position, and then ended up getting the varsity job at the school that I was at back in New York. It's in a city called Utica, and the school was Proctor. And I was the head coach there for a couple of years before I moved out here to California. Ended up getting a job at Long Beach Wilson, becoming the defensive coordinator there. And then a bunch of us moved from Long Beach Wilson over to Jordan, where I was the defensive coordinator over there for about 5 years. And then decided to give college coaching a crack, and went over to Cerritos College with Frank Mazzota for 4 years. And then met my wife, who was not my wife, obviously, at the time, and started dating, and realized that I didn't want to put that kind of time into junior college coaching because it was a lot. We were basically there every day. I couldn't do that and make a commitment to another person. So I gave it up for a while, and then came back as the head coach at Jordan in, I believe it was 2013. I think it was 2013 was my first year back at Long Beach Jordan, and I had been teaching there the entire time. I've been at Jordan since 1999, so kind of been all over the place, but get a lot of experience like that, as I'm sure you know. You talk to a lot of people. That's really the best way to get experience, is to get experience.
Absolutely.
Not in the book. It's out there on the field for sure.
So you came to California in 99?
I came in 96, and I spent 3 years at Long Beach Wilson, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yep.
And so, you've been in the Southern California high school ranks and junior college ranks for a long time, coaching with Coach Mazzota. For those outside of Southern California, he's definitely one of the top junior college coaches, that our state has seen. That must have been some great experience coaching there with him, Coach.
Well, it was because, whenever I have discussions with people, I always bring up things like, you think you know something until you meet somebody that does. And I really thought that I knew what I was doing, but when I got there, I realized that, I just didn't. And I learned a lot of valuable coaching techniques and strategy things being at the junior college level. Specifically things like, I coached the defense, run fits and how to check out of coverages based on formations and stuff that you don't do a lot of in high school. I think maybe they do more now, but you just don't have the time usually. I mean, probably the bigger programs like Mater Dei and Bosco and those schools have time and resources, but like I said, we were literally there till 9:30, 10 o'clock every day, and it took a while to learn that nomenclature and get familiar with it. But once we got it, it made me a better coach, because then when I went back to high school, I realized that there's some things I could use that I didn't really have in my little bag of tricks before. So yeah, it was a great experience, no question at all. And plus the athletes, it's just junior college football in Southern California, unbelievable. The athletes are just, we used to say it's the Pac-12 JVs. That's kind of what it is.
That's a good way to put it. I coached 2017, coached at a JC here that's about a mile from my house, Victor Valley College, coached the special teams over there, and absolutely, it was night and day difference in just the incredible athletes that we had over there. And I know you guys certainly did have some very good ones down in that program you're at. So did you did you growing up through the ranks of coaching, Coach? Did you kind of know you always kind of wanted to be a head coach one day before you became the head coach there at Jordan?
Well, yes. I mean, when I had, like I said, I coached that modified team, so it was me and one other guy, and we kind of just split it up. It was regular tackle football, but it was, it was basics because kids are in 7th and 8th grade. And then the guy who I worked for back in Utica is kind of a little bit of a legend back there. His name is Art Acelta, and he was the quarterback coach for the Buffalo Bills for a few years, and then he worked in the CFL for a while. He's from Utica, so he had a lot of knowledge too, and he kind of took a liking to me because I was dedicated and did a lot of work outside of just the field stuff. And that's when he made me the JV coach. So I got to work right with him. He was probably one of the most demanding coaches I ever worked for. But when he decided to step down, I really thought that I had enough and a broad enough base of knowledge to take over that program that was struggling. It wasn't his fault. It just was a difficult place to work. And I was fortunate enough that they gave me the job. I was young. I was only 27 when I got that job as a head football coach back there. But yeah, I do like it. There's no question, and I did like doing it. But it wasn't like right up on the top of my list of I got to be a head coach. I was never like that. I took a couple other interviews for other positions along the way that I didn't get. And, I guess there's a little bit of disappointment when you don't get something just because, you feel like you should. But I never felt like it was a catastrophe. I was okay with it. Yeah. I just liked being on the field. I didn't have to be in charge of everything.
And usually those are the guys that make pretty good head coaches. When you're humble like that and realize you don't have to be the guy in charge. So what was your favorite thing about being a head coach?
Oh, it's hard to, I don't know if it's easy to delineate exactly just being a head coach, but being a coach just in general is just being around the kids. I mean, that was always my favorite part. It was always the best part of the day. They're always excited. And one of the beauty things about being a high school coach is, kids have a really short memory, and they come out to the field every day, and the kids that are real football players, and you would know what I'm talking about, and I'm sure many of your listeners will, they didn't care what the temperature was. They didn't care what the rain was coming down. They didn't care if it was hot. They just wanted to play football. Yeah. Those were the kids that I wanted to be around because it just made it fun, because that's how I was. So it just made it fun. And there's a lot of work that goes into it, but the best part was just being around the kids. No question about it.
And then how about your least favorite thing about being a head coach?
Just one? I mean, if you had to put it into just one word, it would be paperwork. All the just minutia of just stuff. I mean, it was just ridiculous. Between getting the kids cleared and getting schedules set up and, setting up passing games in the summer and tournaments and, getting the fundraisers going and all that stuff. I mean, it took up probably 70% of my actual hours that I did as a coach were done doing stuff that had absolutely nothing to do with a single play on the football field. And that's what was the most frustrating part. And at a school like Jordan, where our resources were just limited when it came to those things, yeah, I had to do a lot of it myself, or it just wouldn't have gotten done right. I mean, my wife would constantly say, why don't you just give that to somebody else? I'm like, because then we're going to end up doing it twice. And that, unfortunately, was part of the problem. And that's not a knock on anybody. It was just the reality of the situation. That's just what it was.
Yeah, the paperwork, I think a lot of guys, I talk to so many younger guys especially who just want to be a head coach. I think that they forget that there's a lot more to it than Friday nights, And
oh boy,
yeah,
you're not kidding.
I tell everybody, I think one of the big mistakes guys make is thinking that, being a head coach is going to be easy because they just don't see everything that a head coach does. So, Coach, you were shared with me, a couple years ago here. You were fired in a pretty unique way, and that's what this podcast is kind of about, is moving on after you've been fired. So, can you share with us what happened, what went down, how were you fired / let go there at Jordan?
Okay, so we were having a rough year, and I'm going to be very, transparent with you and anybody else that hears it. When you're the head coach of anything, the responsibility of the outcomes of the games are directly related to the way the head coach does things. So we were having a difficult year. We didn't have the players that I thought we were going to have going into the season. And again, that would be a miscalculation on my part. And I'm not going to say probably, I didn't do as good a job coaching as I could have. But we still maintained our integrity. We still maintained the things that I had put in there along with the rest of the staff to keep the program a real program. I've said a million times, anybody can put on a football uniform and play football. That doesn't make you a football player. And we were trying to build that culture of making football players. Well, when you lose, people aren't happy. And that's what was happening. We had lost a bunch of games in a row. I think we were 0-5 at the time. And we just ended up, because high school football in California, one year you play a team and they're loaded, and then you go back the next year and play them, and you go, where'd all those guys go? Well, they left and went somewhere else. And we ended up having Linwood that year, who ended up having 2 kids go on and play on Saturdays. We ended up playing Paramount that year, who ended up having 4 or 5 guys. We ended up playing Norwalk that year, who had the best running back in Southern California at that time. And it just didn't work out for us. So I get a phone call on a Sunday morning. Actually, let me correct that. I got a text message from school on a Sunday morning, and I'm not going to say who it was, and hope you're okay with that. And the message just said, hey, I'd like to talk to you about football. Well, I'm not stupid. I knew exactly what that meant. And is there a time we can meet today? And I'm like, right now. Because, I'm not 12 years old. I mean, I don't need to do all this running around in circle stuff. If you're going to do it, let's just do it and get it over with. So we went back and forth between the principal and the AD about, well, maybe we should go to the school and this. I said, I'm not driving all the way over there. And then somebody suggested, well, there's a mall right next to where you live. I'm like, yeah, there is. So we met in a Sears parking lot on a Sunday morning. The athletic director, myself, and the principal of the school, for them to explain to me why they were going to let me go as the football coach when we had practice tomorrow.
Wow. Coach, what week in the season was that?
It was after, would have been, I believe it was week 6 because of the week 0. I think I made it through 5 games. I don't even remember. I think we were 0-5 at the time. So I guess it would have been technically the 4th week. If that, right, you go 0, right. Yeah, it would have been the 4th week. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right at the end of September.
So when they called that Sunday afternoon and said, hey, we want to meet to talk about football, did you kind of know right then what was going to happen?
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, because I work with these people.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I don't want to make anybody look bad. That's not my thing. But they don't know what they're doing. So it's one of those things, like if you went out and you watched us coach, you would say, well, they're coaching correctly. They're doing all the things you need to do. They just don't have enough players, or they don't have the players to be able to compete against some of these schools that they're playing against. They're in the games, they're not getting, it's not 60-0. We were kind of hanging around with some of those teams, and in that actual season, our best running back that we had back that rushed for 900 yards the year before ended up blowing out his knee in the second game of the year, so we didn't have him. So that made a big difference. It's not an excuse, but it made it difficult. So you would know And you would say, well, he's doing what he can. These people, they look at the scoreboard or they look at the record and go, well, we gotta make a change. I'm like, it's not the NFL.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that's not a education-based athletics, view of the world of football there at Jordan that year. Did you did you think that was coming from parents, or to make a move in the beginning of the year in a parking lot, fire a guy like that, that's got to kind of come from somewhere, right?
Well, so I think what happened was, this is all conjecture, but I think the person who was the principal doesn't know anything about athletics at all.
Yeah.
So was getting pressure from, and some of it was from parents. And, I always had rules about being on time for school and, having, good behavior in the classroom and all that kind of stuff. And of course, a couple of kids every year, it doesn't matter where you are going to push those boundaries for those rules. And of course, some of them did. And then the parents of those kids didn't like it. So then they would show up to the school and have conversations. And the principal, unfortunately, didn't have the filter to say, okay, I'll listen to things that you have concrete, provable evidence on.
Yeah.
Other things, I'm just not going to listen to it. Like, they made this outrageous claim that we refuse to give the kids water. That's 2016, 17. Like, do you even believe that? When she said that to me, the principal, I said, do you believe that?
Yeah.
And she's like, well, no. I said, then why did you listen to it then?
Exactly.
See, your job is to defend me as an employee of the school, not to say, okay, let me go back and ask him if that's true.
Wow.
That doesn't work like that. And of course, that makes me have to defend something that's not true.
Yeah.
Which then makes me think, well, she's listening to these people, which in fact she was. But I just don't think she was informed, and I don't think she was strong enough to say, with enough knowledge to say that's not the problem. Like John's not the problem. He's part of the problem. That's why we've lost all these games, but he's not the problem.
Sure.
And I don't know that she was able to make that. Now, again, full disclosure and transparency, it is my responsibility. So I didn't have any problem saying that day we talked in the parking lot. You're right. The 0-5 is on me. That is. You're absolutely right. The record is on me. The lack of motivation for a bunch of kids that weren't really that talented as football players, not coming and putting forth 100% effort in a game, that's also on me. I have to be able to figure out a way to get them to do that. And, of course, after the move was made, it got worse because all the discipline and all the structure that I had was now gone.
Went out the wayside, yeah.
Of course. So the kids that were the ones that I was kind of holding together with, duct tape and some tinfoil, they were like, well, this is going to be fantastic. Now we don't have to do any of that stuff that Coach Kane was making us do. Now we'll just do whatever we want, which is exactly what happened. And it got worse. And when I pinned him down, because I wanted to know, I said, what is the reason? Don't tell me, some trite statement that you heard on some NFL Today show. What is the reason why you want to let me go? I want a reason. I think I deserve that. I've been at the school for a long time. The answer was, we want to recoup some of the kids that have quit and get them back in the program. That was the answer.
Huh.
And there were maybe 2 or 3 kids that had quit, and 2 of them came back. Both of them lasted for maybe about 2 weeks and were gone again. And 4 or 5 other kids quit on top of that. So they ended up with a negative sum.
Wow.
They didn't gain anything. Yeah.
So,
and I could have, if you and I had that conversation, this exact conversation, on the day that it happened, I would have told you that's what was going on.
Sure, yeah.
I knew it.
They need that discipline.
Of course they do.
So,
of course.
How long did that conversation last in that parking lot?
Maybe 20 minutes or so.
Wow.
about that. The athletic director was there. He knew less than the principal.
Yeah.
He didn't know what he was looking at either. And and I know that sounds really like, well, I mean, I got to be honest. I'm not going to tell you. It's just the way it is.
Oh yeah.
When you don't know, you don't know. You can't tell somebody you don't know, because if they don't know what you're telling them. They're like, what does that even mean?
Had that AD ever coached football before?
No.
Had they ever been a head coach before of any sport?
No.
That's amazing.
As a matter of fact, he never even coached a sport, period.
Yeah, see, that's going to blow away, I think, a lot of our listeners around the nation. They just don't really understand California and how things work here, where you do have, athletic directors who have never coached a sport. It just it's really interesting how that's happening at different schools and different districts, where it's almost, in some places, it's like it's a stepping stone to an admin job, and for whatever reason, good people are getting those jobs with zero athletic administrative experience, zero athletic coaching experience.
Right. Well, as a matter of fact, because I know you like this stuff, and if you ever read another book, feel free to use it. He was the athletic director for 1 year. So the second year, we're going into the football season. So it's maybe the middle of July, beginning of August. And I'm out on the field doing something. He walks up to me and he says, hey, the refs for the season, do we still use 3 for football? And I looked at him, I said, are you serious? And he's like, yeah. So, well, first of all, didn't you fill out the vouchers for the games last year? You could just go back and look. That'd be the easiest thing.
Yeah.
And the second is 3 referees maybe in a flag game. This high school football, we use 5. Oh, okay. And I'm thinking to myself, this guy's the athletic director, and he doesn't even know how many refs we have.
Yeah, that's amazing. Amazing. It
is amazing.
Yeah.
And honestly,
that's something else.
I mean, at the very, very least, I say this all the time. If you don't know, you can Google it.
There you go.
Classroom input. How many referees are there in a high school football game in California? And you have your answer in a half a second.
Google it.
He didn't know. Well, I mean, right?
Yeah, that's amazing.
I mean, it doesn't give the head football coach a whole heck of a lot of confidence when you're asking that question.
Yeah. Coach, so how did you take that? I mean, what did you do? Did they give you a chance to meet with the team? How did all that go?
Nope. They said, well, there's a lot of it that's just hilarious. So we're standing in the parking lot right now. We're having this conversation, and the athletic director says to me, could you put together a list of the things that you do? And I'm like, are you serious? And he's like, yeah. I was like, there's no way. I'm not the football coach anymore. I'm not putting together a list of anything. No.
Yeah.
And then the principal says,
a list of what you do. That's hilarious.
Yeah. And the principal says, is there anybody on the staff that you think could handle the job?
Wow. So they didn't have a plan, it sounds like.
Well, no, and that's exactly right. I'm like, is there a camera here? Are you guys filming this? Is this going to be on, like, America's Funniest Home Videos or something? So you guys are doing this, and we have practice tomorrow, and you don't even know who's going to run practice? Are you serious? Like, you didn't think of that first? And, like, go to the guy and say, hey, we're going to fire John on Sunday. Will you be willing to take over so we got somebody in place? You're really going to ask people tomorrow.
Wow.
And she's like, yeah. I'm like, well, good luck with that.
Unbelievable.
I said, I'm not giving you anybody's name, and I'm not doing it. And then she asked me specifically about a couple people, and I said, I'm not doing that. No.
Yeah, because
I said, if you're smart enough to be standing here right now, figure that out.
Yeah. And then, you give them a name or something, and they, if that doesn't go well, Coach Kane told us to hire him. Right?
Probably. Yep, you're right.
Wow.
You're right. So they didn't have a plan, and they called the coaches, and then that's it. That's the worst thing to do. Because I had to tell the coaches. I did, told them myself, I'm not going to be there. And of course, the majority of them were like, knock it off. It's not April Fool's Day and stuff. Because they just couldn't believe it. They're like, whoa, wait a minute. this isn't your fault. I mean, most of the coaches understood that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, they made the decision. And I said, I told the coaches, whatever you guys decide, there is not going to be any kind of animosity between any of us at all. You guys are going to make decisions based on your own personal and professional ideals as to what you want to bring to school tomorrow. And I'm still going to be the same person. You can come to my classroom and talk to me. We can still sit down and have lunch together. I don't have a problem with any of that. And some of them decided to stay, and others just said, forget it. I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that's going to happen. I mean, you know that. I mean, it's just the way it goes.
Sure.
And I still don't have any animosity towards any of those guys. I still talk to them.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, the guy that took over for me, I helped him get another job in a different district. I mean, that's not my style. Like, I'm not 12.
Sure.
It's not the high school, the junior high, flower dance. And, the girl I like is dancing with somebody else. I don't have time for that stuff.
Yeah. And so, Coach, did you coach here in 2018?
I did not officially coach anything, but I actually coached my kids, their flag football teams and their basketball team, my own personal biological children.
Yeah.
JT and Brennan, they're 9 and 7. And I worked with that. And honestly, best thing that ever happened to me was being able to coach them. It was fantastic.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Awesome.
Yep.
So, how has life been different? How has life been better, worse since you stopped being a head coach?
Well, it's better because I'm spending a lot more time with my own kids and my family and my wife. I'm not running around like a crazy person for, 60 hours a week trying to get stuff done.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I don't think I'd be telling the entire truth if I said I didn't miss some of it, but I really don't miss a lot of it anymore. Just because now that I'm not doing it, like I've been able to realize how much I was actually doing for just a very little amount of money, number one, which people say, oh, it shouldn't be about the money. But when you get to be in your 50s, it is kind of about the money a little bit. I mean, It's a lot of time. And you got to be able to get some kind of compensation. And I did. I mean, I was paid to be the head football coach, but not to do all those other things. So now I lost that money as the head coach, but I'm gaining the time. So I think it's better. I think the time's better, honestly. And my kids love it. I actually applied for the head job at Valley Christian, which is in Cerritos.
Yeah.
And I made it. This was a couple of years ago. I made it to the interview process, and we were riding in the car, and I said to my kids, it was just me and my boys, if I get this job that I applied for, I'm not going to be able to coach your flag football teams, because the name of the league for people that don't know is called Friday Night Light. So they play their games obviously on Fridays. So I wouldn't have been able to go to their games or coach them. And my littlest one, who was 6 at the time, said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, if I go back to coaching high school football, then I can't be your coach. And he said, Daddy, I don't want that. I want you to be my coach. And when he said that, I'm like, he's only going to be 6 years old once and 7 years old once. I'm not going to do it. So I called the guy and I said, hey, look, man, this is the reason. And I told him the exact same story I just told you. And he's like, well, he goes, if that's the reason why you don't want to do it, man, I goes, I respect that. And I said, well, I'm sorry I brought you all the way to this point, but I never really asked my kids like that. And I didn't really think I was going to get that answer, to be honest with you.
Sure.
But I did. So, and it's been great. I don't have to tell you, you go watch your kids play. I mean, you know how that feels.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think a lot of guys miss that. When I was asked to take this JC job, that's the first conversation I had was with my wife. The second one I had was with my son, because I'd coached him in flag football, and I said, hey, they play on Saturdays. And so I said,
right,
hey, son, I won't be able to, coach your team if I go do this, but so I wanted to have that conversation with him, and not to put it on I think he was 11 at the time, not to put it all on the shoulders of an 11-year-old, but just to have that honest conversation, and I'd be able to read his body language if he was telling me one thing and felt another. And he was,
Right.
He was genuinely excited for me, and I think a little part of him too is he wanted to have another coach because his old man had coached him every year,
Yeah.
So and then
Right.
it ended up being he ended up playing soccer that season. He didn't play flag football, so which was interesting, and then. I just did that for 1 year and various reasons, stepped down into an admin role here, stepped down from the coaching and took on an admin role. And so I told him, hey, I can coach again if you want to play flag football. And then he said, yeah, man, that's awesome. So then he played again this season. Yeah, coaching your own kids, there's nothing like it. So, well, Coach.
Well,
thanks.
and I do think, honestly, I know this, people make all these comments, have all these metaphors and things like that, but the truth of the matter is they did me a favor, and that is the truth, because the ironic thing about the whole entire episode was about 2 weeks before it happened, I sat in the principal's office with the principal and the vice principal and told them at the end of this season I'm not going to coach anymore.
Wow.
Which made the whole thing even more unbelievable. Like, I don't know what they thought was going to happen. Like, they were going to bring somebody in, and all of a sudden they were going to win, 5 games.
In the middle of season,
and beat Long Beach Poly or something. Yeah, I don't know. But, I had done a lot to create a culture, and they just didn't see it. I mean, our kids wore shirt and ties every Friday, the whole football team to school. The teachers loved it. I had a teacher's night. I instituted that. So every senior on the team got to pick a teacher that had made a big impact in their life while they were at the school.
Yeah.
And then that teacher wore that kid's jersey that Friday to school. And then we had a ceremony for them before the game on the field. And each kid picked something to give to their teacher as a little token of appreciation. I mean, people love that stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And of course, now they don't do it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, this and for those who don't know, Long Beach, Jordan, down in Long Beach area, these are things that don't typically happen in a lot of these schools down in that area that the coach is talking about.
No, you're absolutely right. As a matter of fact, I've had kids come back and tell me that these are kids that played high school football and were, all league players and have gone on to play in college. The one about you is you taught me how to tie a tie. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah,
that's the stuff awesome. Kids remember. It would sit in my room and I'd show them. I mean, it was if I had a video, it'd be hilarious trying to show all these kids with these big sausage fingers. This is what you have to do, and they're showing each other, and they're trying to get it right so they would get the tie tied correctly, because you have to wear it to school. I had people donate shirts and ties and all. We would meet in our quad, and teachers would bring stuff, and all the kids would show up with shirts, and it was, that's the way we started out the day on Friday, game day. And I thought that stuff was actually more important than who's supposed to fit in the C gap.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just did. And, that stuff's gone. Maybe it'll come back. I don't know. But I think that's where those people have really lost out, is on things like that.
Yeah.
That's a personal opinion, obviously, because I did it.
Yeah, I know.
Somebody
right.
else may look at that and go, that's not a big deal. Who cares about that? And that's their opinion. So I respect it. But I always felt that was important.
Yeah. Well, Coach, we thank you for sharing your story. Any last little tidbit, word of warning, advice for those guys who are maybe wanting to be a head coach, or maybe have just got fired from their job?
Like you said, it always looks easy. I've told people all the time, whenever we have conversations about when a program's running well and it looks easy, don't be fooled, because it's not. Those are the guys that are working way harder. And once you get in there, be prepared to put all that time in and just be, have that fortitude to stay with it, because it's like a marriage. Everything's not going to go perfect. And you're going to have to be able to be flexible and resilient. If you're not, and things get to you easily, it's not going to work. because you're going to take a lot of bombs, man. There's a lot of incoming, and it's all the time. And even the good coaches, guys that I've worked with that have won, I mean, I could make a list for you, and you'd know every single person on that list, including Raul Lara and Jason Negro and Bruce Rollins and all those guys. I mean, I think they would probably tell you it's harder to win than it is to lose.
Oh, yeah. The demands become
more. So absolutely, you have got to be able to take all that incoming and still be able to get up every morning and go and have the same positive, clear-minded attitude to go in there and do the best thing you can do for those kids. It's not easy.
No.
It's just not. And you have my information. If anybody ever wants to talk to me personally, I'd be more than happy to help anybody, especially young coaches. People did it for me, and I would have no problem taking some time to, email back and forth, talk to somebody on the phone, anything, you feel to give out my information. I have no problem with that at all.
Coach, give us your Twitter handle for that reason.
Yes, I am at Coach J. Kane.
At Coach J, as in
right.
Just
John.
J. Kane.
Right.
Kane. There we go. Coach, hey, thanks for your time. I really appreciate your time today, and you guys have a great trip up to Big Bear.
And listen, you do a lot for coaches, and I know you do it on your own time. So personally, I'd like to thank you, and professionally, I don't think people realize what you've done for the coaching profession and how you've made it better for all of us, even us guys that get canned. You're always there for us, and I really appreciate that. So thank you very much for all that, Coach.
Hey, thank you. I really appreciate those words. We'll see you, Coach.
All right, man. Have a good one. Take care.
Bye-bye. So I'd like to thank Coach Kane for coming on the show. Really appreciate that, Coach. Thank you very much. So for my story, I'm going to talk through that a little bit here. I was, I don't know what you want to call it, fired, asked to resign, let go, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't really matter now. It happened 7 years ago. But it was Friday, March 18th, 2011. I remember it clearly because March 19th started a vacation for me, a one-week vacation. I was athletic director, head football coach at a school in Orange County, California here. And I was there for 5 years. In my fourth year, my fifth year. In my fifth year, I had a brand new superintendent come in. And in the private sector, as is the case, I suppose, in other sectors, not as much in the public sector, but in the private sector, new guy comes in. A lot of times they're going to bring in all their new guys. In fact, he brought in a new K through 8 principal. He brought in a couple new people around that table, and me as the AD head football coach, I'm one that he decided to let go. It was interesting because I got there in 2006. In 2005, the program was 0-9. The year before that, I think they were 2-8. So we won 5 games my first year there. We went 5-5, turned that thing around from no wins to 5 wins. And 2 of those games that we lost on the last play of the game. Once with my offense on the field, once with my defense on the field. So we were really 2 plays away from going from, 0 to 7 wins. So it was tremendous. Went back to the playoffs that year for the first time in 5 or 6 years. Had a good season. I was excited to be there. I thought, man, we're going to turn this thing around for good. We've got, I always thought that this program was, they kind of went to the quarterfinals or, first round or quarterfinals every year. And I thought, you know what, there's enough talent here to get over the hump. What I didn't know is between when I played them in 2002, I had played that school and kind of they hit my radar and, they had 35, 40 kids on their roster. I thought it was a really good private school to be at. And then when it came open and the principal asked me to come over and interview for the job, I thought, man, this is a great place. What I didn't know is between 2002 and 2006, they lost a ton of kids. A school called J. Sarah, who's in the Trinity League now. If you're in SoCal, you know them. Trinity League, J. Sarah was 2 miles away, charged the same tuition, but had tremendous facilities. And all of a sudden, all these kids, about half of our 8th grade class every year, was leaving for J. Sarah, was leaving Capital Valley Christian for J. Sarah. So it made for a really rough football scenario there. But like I said, 2006 we turned it around. We made a developed a tough schedule because I looked in 06. I'm like, I can't believe you've lost to these schools the last 2 years. And so in the fall of 06, I made our next 07, 08 schedules, and we toughened things up because I planned on turning things around. We built it from 19 kids in the program up to about 32 kids in the program my first year there. And I thought, next year we'll have 40, 45. Well, what I didn't know is what that enrollment was doing. When I got there, they had 210 kids. The next year it was like 190. My next year was 170. And so we were just losing kids out the back door like crazy from 8th to 9th grade. And so that was a bad scenario. Long story short, 2008, we go 0-10. It was the worst season of my life. We go 8 of those teams played in the CIF playoffs. 3 of those teams were CIF champions. So we played a tremendously brutal schedule with now like 20 kids in the program. So anyway, it was a tough situation there at Capital Valley Christian for me. So after that year, I said, you know what, the best thing to do is for us to go into 8-man football. We got 20 kids in the program, 22 kids in the program, something like that. We've got 170 in the school. Out of that 170, 30 are international kids from Asia who don't play football. That's just how it was, So we're looking at basically 70 boys in the school, 20 of them playing football, which isn't too bad of a percentage. But anyway, we go to 8-man football in 2009. We do okay, I think 7-2. And then the next year, 2010, we win league championship, which was pretty neat. We first league championship for that school in about 9 years, I think. Although it was 8-man. 8-man is very different. So anyhow, this guy who came in as superintendent was like, yeah, we need to get out of 8-man back to 11-man, which I 100% agreed with. It'd be a great move. Give me some athletes in the school, and let's go that route. But so he thought a more attractive a candidate would be a good thing for the head football coach, and so I was out of a job. So that's kind of how that went down. In March 18th, 2011, about 2:30, I get a phone call. Hey, come over to the office. All right. Mind you, I was a 12-month employee, and so I got, I think, 3 weeks off during a year, vacation time, 15 days vacation time I got at the time. And so I was taking a week of vacation in the spring, in March. My kids were out of school. They were not starting school yet. I had 2 kids. I think they were 2 and 4 years old, and 1 on the way, a bun in the oven, so to speak. My mom is a stay-at-home mom, and so I was the only source of income, and I get pulled in the day before a vacation, a 1-week-long vacation, and told, we're going in a different direction, basically. And I was like, you just ruined my vacation, homeboy. Why couldn't you have told me this after my vacation? I mean, I guess I kind of understand why he did it then, looking back a little bit. But no, not really. I mean, that dude ruined my vacation. He did. My family was a mess that week. We were going just very locally, Escondido, Lawrence Welk Resort Villa. If you're in SoCal, you know where that is, maybe in Escondido. We lived in Oceanside at the time, so it's not like we had this big extravagant vacation planned or nothing. But it was an awful time, to say the least. Here I am, 35 years old. Like I said, only source of income, 2 kids, 1 on the way. Bought our house in Oceanside in 2006. Here I am 5 years later. The market is awful. Okay, whole market crashed in 2008. I've only been in private schools. The private school market is awful. Nobody's hiring. I don't have a credential at all. Okay, because like I said, I worked for 4 years in a church setting, and then in 2001 entered private school world. So from 01 to 11. That's all I've known is the private school world, and again, don't have a credential. I do have a master's degree, but that's not going to get you a public school teaching and coaching job, and so I'm sitting here pretty screwed in March of 2011. Okay, it was interesting. We had a tremendous year that year. Our athletic department, as I was an AD as well, we hired a bunch of good coaches. We won 5 league championships that year. They had never won 5 league championships ever in the history of their school. And so, 40 years. And so I was real proud of that, but it didn't matter. And so there I go. I get that news. I go to my phone, make a phone call to my wife, and there I am, a 35-year-old man with my office door closed, and I'm crying. I'm shaking, and I told her I'm not gonna have a job as of July 1st. So he told me in March. I guess it was nice of them to give me a couple of months to figure things out. He asked me to stay on and train whoever the new guy was. Obviously, that was very hard to do, but I was out of a job. There we have it. I was given, we're going in a different direction approach. You can either resign or we will, fire you type of thing. So it was awful. You don't ever want to be in that boat. Looking back, there are probably some things I could have done a little different with football there. I don't know though. We ran a strict program. If you, football is a tough sport. If you are not going to be in the weight room or playing another sport year round, you're not just going to show up in August and play. That was one of our deals. We need you in this thing for the long haul, and we need you committed. And the next coach who came in was told, he couldn't do that. So they kind of had to accept anyone out there in August who showed up. And then obviously what happened? The number spiked a little bit, and it was like, oh, that old Coach Fore, he only had 22 kids playing. Now we got 30. So for the first time in my life, really, I'm looking for a job, 35 years old. I unemployed, could tell you stories, could talk a lot about sitting there in unemployment line and getting food stamps. And I mean, it was awful. That private school tried to screw me out of unemployment. And so I had to go fight for 6 months. They were not paying me any unemployment. I had to go fight, and actually kind of led, because they got rid of, 9 or 10 others who all were in the same boat fighting for unemployment. And so we kind of had to do a class action, not a lawsuit, but we had to do this it wasn't a lawsuit, but I had to go appear before 2 different judges in San Diego to plead my case. It's a long story, but in California, if you work at a church, you're not entitled to unemployment. But this wasn't a church. It was a private school. It was housed at a church, but it was not working at the church or for the church. Well, the school did some real shady things and tried basically saying, no, we're all part of the church, which they weren't. They had separated from the church as a total business, years before I had gotten there. So I had to get all those documents. I put together about 100-page documents to go in and fight. When you get a thing back from the state saying you don't get any unemployment from your employer, boy, that's a real gut-wrenching thing as well. And so I, had to appeal that, and then my appeal comes back saying, nope, sorry. It took like 2 months for that to come back. Nope, sorry. Appeal didn't work. Your employer is saying they're you're employed by the church. So here's a Christian school lying to the state, and I had to fight them, like I said, for about 6 months to get that pay. And then they had to write me a check, back pay it all the way back for those 6 months, which was good. But here we are just living off of our savings and, literally living on $2,000 a month. We short-sold our house. It was an awful situation. I don't wish on anybody. So what to do when you're fired? Number one, take a deep breath. That vacation sucked, but it was kind of a good thing just to get away. Okay, but it took me about a month to realize, you know what, everything's going to be okay. I've got my wife and my kids. That's all I need. It took me, time to kind of step back from the situation. I lost a lot of sleep. I wasn't eating. So that lack of sleep, that stress did absolutely nothing for me. One thing that helped me was just getting with a very good friend and mentor of mine. He constantly built me up, reminded me I was a good coach, I was a good person, reminded me there was a plan out there for me. So seek out a mentor, take a deep breath. Number 2, network. I started to spread the word. I was looking for a job. I called guys I knew. asked for help, reached out to everyone I could think of. I had a stack of business cards in my desk. I just started calling those guys, emailing those guys my resume. Word started spread. I was looking for a job. I had to create a resume for the first time in probably 10 years. Okay. And actually, that's how I fell into my resume making business, because I found out there's nobody helping coaches, with coach specific resumes, because a coaching resume and a business resume are worlds apart. They're so much different. And I kind of had to learn all that on my own, and I'm fortunate that I did. But, we got all that taken care of, and I was able to get out and get some good interviews and what have you. I created a website, coachfore.org. That's my website. I created that out of after losing my job, because I wanted to give myself an online presence. The website was never, ever meant to host 500 people a day like it did in 2016, or up to 600 people a day in 2017. 600 people a day, 2018 visited my website. I never designed it for that. It was just I wanted to create 10 pages on coachfore.org. I wanted to create 10 pages to send out to principals. Hey, here's my practice plan. Here's some letters of recommendation. Here's my philosophy as I looked for new jobs. So that's all it was. Now I've written 400 articles, and the website has turned into, making me some money. Not much, but, it's not life-changing or anything. But that website then turned into my consulting business. So it's pretty interesting to see how all that kind of took off. Go back to school. That's another thing to do if you've been fired. Make yourself more marketable. As I said, I didn't have a public school credential at the time, so I had to go get a credential. And I had 5 or 6 different coaches tell me in 2011, dude, I could hire you right now if you had a special education credential. I could hire you right now to teach special ed and to coach football for me. I would love it. Go get a SPED credential. I had a couple administrators in the public sector tell me the same thing. Go get a special ed credential. And so I went and got that. It's something I did. Went and got that public school credential to open up my possibilities. Get better as a coach. Another thing to do. Take a deep breath, network, go back to school, get better as a coach. I am 10 times the football coach now in 2018 than I was in 2011. Trust me. I feel like it's interesting, man. I feel like I've learned so much football over the course of the last 7 years from all the networking and people I've met and clinics I've gone to, clinics I've talked at. Man, I'm 10, 12, 20 times the football coach I was in 2011. And I was a head coach from 03 to 11, and I think about 2003, 2004, those days. Like, we went to the semifinals in 2004 when I was at Linfield Christian. Linfield won a championship this year with Coach Burns. Congratulations. But, I look back to those things going, gosh, if I knew then what I know now, I mean, we would have had way better teams. So I took that 2011 season off from coaching. I did not coach at all. And so we ended up having to move. We lost our house, as I said. We moved to my wife's grandmother was getting very old and ill, and so she moved to live with a relative. She left a house in Redondo Beach, wide open. It was about 1,000 square feet. I mean, that is a tiny house for a man, wife, and 3 kids. One of them a newborn, born in June of that year after I lost my job. So, boy, you talk about, I think it was like 950 square feet, basically, 2 average size hotel rooms our family of 5 was living in. But in 2011, it was awesome because I got to go to the game of the week, basically. I selected the game I wanted to go to every Friday night. I actually got a job writing for covering games, patch.com, an old, I don't even know if Patch is around still, but that was awesome. I went to games and and covered games and interviewed players and coaches afterwards. I became a reporter all of a sudden because I love writing. I always have. And so this guy reached out to me, hey, you're not coaching this year. Why don't you cover and write some stories for us? So, yeah, he'd pay me $50. I'd go out and cover a game and write a story on the game. And so that was pretty neat. But I learned a ton from coaches that year. I went to a lot of practices. I asked a lot of questions. I was determined to become a better football coach, not to ever get fired again from, coaching football. I also wrote a book that year. I had an idea one night just to reach out to state champion head coaches. As I said, I was asking a lot of coaches a lot of questions. And so I sent out 10 emails to 10 head coaches who won state championships in 2011. I asked them all 3 questions, and I started getting their answers back. I also started on Twitter in 2011, and so I would tweet out their answers. I had 50 followers. I'll never forget it. I had 50 people following me, and I would send out, hey, check out what this, state champion in Maine just said about their weight room. Boom, boom, boom. I'd tweet out something about it, and these coaches would respond, oh, that's awesome. How'd you get that information? Who's that coach? The information was great. So then this is December of 2011. I researched, how do you write a book? And so I sent, how do you get a book deal, so to speak? I thought, you'd make some money. You make almost nothing writing a book unless you do it on your own. I do self-published books. I've written 3 books, 2 for Coach's Choice, building championship caliber football programs, and then Shield Punt. And then I've written a 3rd, Insider's Guide to Scoring Your Next Coaching Job, and I've just self-published that one because you make more money, a lot more money self-publishing something, selling it on your own website. So, but it is pretty cool. Coach's Choice, good organization. Enjoyed working with them. It's pretty neat going out to all the clinics, conferences, seeing my books for sale. So I wrote a book, and it's pretty funny. My first book contract, I wrote a book called Building Championship Caliber Football Programs less than a year after I was fired as a head coach. That's pretty funny. But folks, here's the deal. And as Coach Kane said earlier, best thing that ever happened to me, getting fired. 1,000%. I agree. I say the same thing. That's the best thing that ever happened for me and my family. The pain was short-lived. I mean, I was out driving a taxi. That was pretty interesting, actually. But drove a taxi down in North San Diego County because it was an easy, quick job to get. I mean, it took an email, a 10-minute meeting. He's like, yeah, you're good. Here's what you need to do. So I would go work, a 12-hour shift and make $40 one night. And, Friday night, that would be like on a Tuesday night. Imagine that, 12 hours in a taxi cab. This is before Uber and Lyft. 12 hours. You had to work 12 hours. So I had to work. I picked up the taxi at 4 p.m. You'd go out, work till 4 a.m., take the taxi back, go home and sleep, get it at 4 p.m. again. So you worked a 12-hour shift. I'd make $40, $60, $80 over 12 hours on some nights. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday nights weren't very good. But then, you'd make some money on Friday and Saturday. And when I say make some money, like you'd make $300, for 12 hours in a car. So it was fun work, though. It was interesting. But, I had some tough days. Had some long nights in that taxi. I sat there in that taxi some nights thinking, my life in education, teaching, and coaching is done. It's gone. I've been fired. What can happen now? But, folks, you will bounce back. I promise you, you will bounce back. Okay? Do some of those things I said. Go network with coaches. Go get another degree. Make yourself more marketable. Think outside the box. Start a website. Okay? Put together a great resume. I really hope this doesn't come off the wrong way, but I'm trying to encourage you. Okay? I know exactly how you feel. You might feel that your career is over, but maybe you're just at the beginning. Let me tell you some things here. I never wrote a book before I was fired, but now I've written 3 and a few different manuals on my website. I never spoke at a Glazier clinic before I was fired, but I've honored to speak at various ones ever since. I never consulted a top 10 program in the nation about special teams before I was fired, but I have been paid to consult a team like that since. I've never been asked to be on the California Coaches Association board before I was fired. Now I'm the president of the California Coaches Association. I never ever wrote a column for Max Preps before I was fired. Now I write for Max Preps, and they compensate me every month to write 4 articles. I never wrote an article for X&O Labs before I was fired, but I've written a few for them since. I was never hired as a football coach expert witness before I was fired, but I've served as an expert witness 10 different times now in cases where I get paid, more than $175 an hour to read about football. It blows me away. I mean, when I was a head coach and got fired from that job in 2011, I made $3,000, as a stipend. I think it was maybe $3,500. Divide that out per the hours, not very much money. Now I'll work on one case, and as I said, make $225 an hour. That I never did that, never dreamed, never even knew about that opportunity before I was fired. I never had a website called shieldpunt.com before I was hired. I never was hired by college coaches to install one punt play. I've never, college coach never asked me for help on that. Now I have. I was never asked by a school to find them a head football coach, and I've done that half a dozen times over the last couple of years. I never thought of teaching master's level college courses before I was fired in 2011. But now I'm a part-time professor at Azusa Pacific University, where I teach a course starting in a few days here on January 7th. I teach one about facility and event management, and then I teach another one about leadership and administration of athletic programs at a college-level master's class, Azusa Pacific. So I could go on and on with some really neat things I've been able to do. Last year I spoke at the American Football Coaches Association conference in Orlando. No, that was in North Carolina. Last year I was asked to be a part of USA Football 50-person national alliance. These are things I look back and I can't believe that these things have happened to me. It's amazing. It's tremendous. Never dreamed of any of this stuff before I got fired in 2011. I was just a simple old football coach. But you got to take the bull by the horns. There's better days ahead, Coach. Trust me. I would have never imagined all these things that I've talked about. I've been lucky to do when I sat in my office that day wondering what in the world just happened when I called my wife. I know the feeling you're going through. I understand the stress. I understand the embarrassment, the humility. I understand waking up at 3 a.m. sweating. I understand what it's like to pack boxes in that office. I understand losing your house. I get it. Take a deep breath. There are better days ahead. You're just going to have to work a little harder now to find those better days. You can do it. You can do it. Trust me. If I could go through this process of being fired, losing a house, sole income, 2 kids, baby on the way, moving into a little rinky-dink apartment, fighting for my own unemployment, driving a taxi, getting food stamps. If I could work my way through all that, Coach, you can too. I know you can. Please reach out. Let me know how I can help you personally. And I hope that you've gotten something from this podcast here. Happy New Year, 2019. Keep on pressing on if you have been fired. If you haven't and you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with somebody. Please give me a rating on iTunes. I would appreciate that. That helps the podcast. And folks, I look forward to a great 2019 with you as coaches. I wish you the best of luck. You can reach me on Twitter at Coach Fore, CoachFore, at Coach Fore on Twitter. My email is Chris, CHRIS, at 8laces.org. You can check out the show notes and my podcast home at 8laces, EIGHTLACES.org /podcast. Bye-bye.